Got it.
Okay, so we're early, which is good. I'm always early, me. I'm one of those people who are sort of anal about being early because I think it's a sign of respect to be early. I can't stand anybody turning up late. But what I'll do is, before we start, Sue, just bear with me, and I'll go onto my page here and put it onto that page so that we can see some comments coming in. I'm getting quicker at doing this, but not that quick. Here we go. So it'll make a noise first. Oh no, not bad. Great. So it's 19:59, which means it's nearly 8 o'clock in the UK, and it's other times across the world, and I've forgotten what times they are, But what I'll do is, this is being streamed. Do you want to share this on your site at all, or?
I will do once it's recorded. I won't do it
Okay.
now because my tech brain is not.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I might be able to do that to yours now. Do you want me to try?
You can try, yeah.
I'll have a bash. Share to a group. Well, that says group, so no, I won't. Share to Sue Taylor. It says, oh no, that'll be on Messenger. No, I'm not going to do it because I can't. It's too hard. Hang on. Oh, there's my friend Denise. Denise is here. Hi, lovelies. Billy's here. Bev Williams. Hiya, Bev, love. Brenda Higgins. Jolly good. Okay, so it looks like the mob are here.
Good.
So we can start. Sue, I've only met you once in person, and we didn't spend much time talking to one another, but there seemed to be some sort of a resonance with what we do. You know what I mean? And I think that we help, if possible, people who've been through difficult circumstances and who want to come out the other end because we've been through them ourselves. So the whole purpose of me setting this channel up, if you like, was because I've been through all sorts of stuff, mostly addicted to alcohol, years and years of stress and anxiety and depression and all sorts of other addictions, and then at the end of it, I got in such a mess that I made 2 serious attempts to do myself in because I couldn't handle it anymore. Now, obviously, unless I'm reincarnated in exactly the same form, those 2 attempts weren't successful. You know what I mean? So I got it on the second one, which was a really good one, and I shouldn't be here, and that's the truth of it. I make light of it, but not in a stupid way. I try and keep lighthearted and a humorous approach to desperately serious subjects. Yeah. So on the second attempt, I got a feeling like, hang on, maybe it's not time for me to go. Maybe there's a reason for all this, and I got a sense of that something was like guiding me, to go forward and look at things in a different way. So that's where I'm coming from, So from there, I then went on to do quite a lot of study in how the mind works, and especially the mind that most people aren't aware of, the unconscious or the subconscious mind. And I see that most of my actions are motivated beyond what this knows. And so that's what hopefully we can talk about. But that's where I'm coming from. And who are you? What's your name and where do you come from? Number 2. That's my opening line. Over to you, Sue.
Well, Silla.
Yeah.
My name's Sue, and I'm from Liverpool.
Oh my God.
So very similar background, really. So I shouldn't be here either. I didn't try to do myself in as such, but I was on a very slow decline. I suffered from anxiety, panic disorder, depression, and eating disorder, which started as anorexia and then propelled into kind of compulsive eating and bulimia. So there was more than one occasion where my heart nearly gave out, and I was kind of having me the priest come into the hospital to give me my last rites, and somehow I pulled through. And similar kind of curve in that I'm still here for a reason, and in order to kind of do something with what I've learned through those experiences, I had to develop an understanding of why I was there in the first place. And a lot of that came again through the brain and how the brain works, how compulsions work, how self-harm works in the form of sort of starving yourself or binging on food in order to numb emotions, in order to feel a sense of comfort, in order to control things when things feel out of control. So it was all this understanding of, wow, this is why I'm behaving in the way I'm behaving. And it was through that understanding that I suddenly had a choice of, I can carry on doing this and end up in a box, or I can change and actually, you know, help other people come through the other side. And that was kind of the path that I took. And it wasn't an overnight thing. I don't think it ever is an overnight thing, because we're human, we're flawed. But I had to come to a place of accepting that it was never going to be perfect. It was never going to be, oh, you're 100% healed now and you're better, and, you know, now you can kind of help other people. I had to kind of accept that there's always going to be those sort of self-destruct parts of me that want to kind of just give in and sort of not fight anymore. But I have the power to decide on that. So it's up to me how far I kind of go down that self-destruct path or not. And thankfully, I would say they happen very few and far between now, where I kind of get to that point where it's like, oh, this is just pointless, just kind of binging now. For years it was starving, but now my go-to would be binging, and I have to consciously remind myself why that's not a good idea. In the same way as, you know, I did suffer with alcoholism for a number of years, and I haven't drank for 13 years now. But in the same way that you'd kind of, your default would be to go to alcohol or drugs or whatever your vice may be. So it's always being conscious of those kind of thoughts that come up, and understanding why are they coming up now, what's going on for me right now that's leading me down that path again. So yeah, that's where I come from.
Similarly, yeah. You said a few things there that I maybe pick up on. One of them was you got the last right. So does that mean that you were or are a Roman Catholic by type of person?
No, but you know, I had several people praying for me at different points in my life, even though I'm not religious myself. I did have a lot of people kind of praying for me and wishing me back out of that sort of mentality and that state of health or ill health, really. So yeah.
And no, it's I think because it played a big part in my life, Roman Catholicism and the upbringing, you know, and not all of it was bad, but some of it was difficult to overcome. You know, I'm not religious now. I've dropped all religion, but I do believe in spirituality. And to me, spirituality is not a holy thing. It's just something where you can tap into something deeper inside of yourself. And that's the power that helps you to change in the end, you know. I mean, you can put religion on that if you like, but I don't, and I don't get involved with any sort of religious debate. But, you know, I was exorcised, I think, more than anybody else on the whole Wirral, you know, where we live, right? Because I used to come out of the Towers bar as drunk as a skunk, you know, and find myself in the local St. Albans church, you know, and I've had more holy water thrown on me. I should have been drowned by the priest, you know, but I didn't know what to do, you know. I kept going back, and I always kept battering the door down to say, Father, will you please help me? And maybe in the end, the prayer was answered. I don't know. You know, but I do know on that second attempt to do myself in, some feeling got hold of me, which was comforting. It was like, I can only explain it as the peace that passeth all understanding. It was like a peace descended upon me. And I thought, oh, thank God for that. It's here. Take me away now. I've had enough. And it was exactly the opposite. It was almost like, no, you're staying here, right? They turned me round, kicked me up the bottom and said, look, son, we'll show you how to do this. You just got to listen in and act upon the information received, you know. And that's what I did in the end. And, you know, it's next Friday will be 30 years since I've had a drink of alcohol. Amazing. And taking any other mind altering substances for the purpose of gaining some chemical peace of mind. So
Yeah.
all in that time, I've been clean and sober and just working, if you like, on my own innate inner resourcefulness, you know. And people can call that, like, some people think that that's spirits. Some people, I don't, guardian angels, extraterrestrial. I don't care. I don't put a label on it, because I think what happens is that way many people see and describe and see the same thing, but they use different words to describe it, and then we fall out over the wording that we're using, you know. So I try not to get too involved in labels and stuff, because I think it just confuses things. So the other thing is, you mentioned stress and anxiety. Do you want to talk a little bit about why were you stressed and why were you anxious?
So for me, I think a lot of the stress and anxiety comes from that disconnect. So as you're speaking to like that kind of inner thing, whatever you want to call it, your inner self, your inner guide, your, you know, inner spirit, whatever it is, when we are living in our natural states, we're kind of connected to that, and we know when we need a bit of a challenge. We know when we're kind of content. We know when we need sleep. We know when we need food. We know when we need water. We know how to keep ourselves in complete balance. But the way we live our lives, we're completely disconnected from that. There's so much artificial that we've lost that kind of inner tuition, that inner tutor, and that guide that tells you exactly what you need in any given situation and how to react and respond. So you kind of lose trust with yourself. So the experience I faced through my life, I started to question myself, and I started to think, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe, you know, I'm not quite getting this. And that was where the stress started to come in, and the anxiety, and the not feeling enough, not feeling like I could handle life. And that was when I had to control things in other ways, and the anxiety really played a bigger role, because I think the more you kind of start to feel anxious, the bigger those parts of your brain, that fight flight part of your brain, develops. So then you become hyper vigilant, and you're like looking out for every little threat. And if there isn't a threat, you'll create a threat, because you're like, I need to panic about something, because I've got used to that certain level of adrenaline in my system that I'm just going to find something else to panic about. So then it has this like spiral effect that spirals out and gets bigger and bigger. So in order to try and ease that, I suppose, I had to start developing an understanding of where that was coming from, and develop some compassion around that of, right, okay, you're actually safe here. There's nothing to worry about. Let's just kind of breathe a while, take a step back, and just kind of start to rest and pause and take some of that stress away. And it was through that, taking the stress away and going easy on myself, that I started to connect with exactly what I needed and all the resources I had inside. So when I'm doing any sort of work with clients, it's always about tapping into their own resources and reminding them that they've got everything they need inside. They just need to listen and tune in and create space in order to listen. Because we don't give ourselves space. We're always on to the next thing. What do you need to do next? Who do you need to please next? What's your next kind of task, your next role? And that's kind of almost bred into us. We're always looking for that external validation. You know, what job do you do? What grades did you get at school? Are you married? Have you got kids? Have you got your own mortgage? It's all these external things. And even gratitude. I have a real issue with gratitude journals, because we're taught to feel grateful for what we have. And for me, it's about starting to feel to celebrate what you are, who you are, what characteristics you have. Are you determined? Are you resilient? Are you passionate? Are you loving? Are you creative? Start to acknowledge those things, then feel grateful for what you have. But start inside, because it's the inside bit that we're all messed up and disconnected from.
Grace, I think, you know, I do believe in the cultivation of an attitude of gratitude. but only following, going inside and finding out what your strengths and your resources are, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that you're right. I mean, the way I look at it is, I think from a societal point of view, we're conditioned and programmed from the day that we pop out, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so my whole life and my choices, right, even though I didn't understand that they were all buried, if you like, in patterns in my unconscious mind, those things were guiding my choices all the time, you know, and they weren't me. I mean, you mentioned it basically pretentiousness, really. I was pretending to be somebody that I wasn't. And I think freedom comes is when you turn your eyes the other way around and look at who you really are, you know. And
Yeah.
I couldn't do that for a long time because, you know, that external validation of, oh, look how well you're doing. You know, I've got more certificates than most people on the planet, you know, of all the exams and all that I've done. And I could paper all the walls, and I'd say to people, look, I've just got this now, and I've got this. And they go, oh, you're doing so well. But I never felt well on the inside. I felt crap all the time. You know, it was a hole in the soul that couldn't be filled by exams and qualifications. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that the solution to my problem wasn't material. It was spiritual, not religious. It can be religious if you want it to be, but it had to be the following, if you like, of spiritual principles. And all that means is complete and utter self-honesty.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was afraid of looking at. I was afraid of looking at that. But I got to a point in my life where I hit a rock bottom, and I worked with people who'd been through that process, and they gently, but in a tough way, guided me to help me to look at myself and to see maybe where my thinking was misdirected, you know. And so were my emotions as well, you know, because I didn't realize that I had a conscious mind, you know, but below the surface there was another 4/5 of my mind that were basically directing operations, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that. I mean, this is all Jungian psychology, and Freud's in there, and you know, they call it depth psychology. But as you say, once you start to create some space in a mindful way, and I do it through mindful breathing and positive emotion, once that happens and space emerges, then stuff starts to bubble up from this stuff underneath. And it's helping people through that, because that's the stuff that they've been burying down, you know. And what I try and help people with is, if they're really feeling uncomfortable after talking to us, then it's working for them, you know.
Yeah.
And all they basically have to do, and I'll talk about this later, is they basically just have to breathe away the engagement with their emotional state. And that's why things like Tai Chi and Qigong and running and all those sort of things, you can get it off your chest and let it go and give it some space. So when it's far away enough, you can look at it in an objective way without it recoiling and rebounding and taking you back where you were before, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I know that you work in the same sort of a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about accepting that those difficult emotions
Yeah.
are just part of our humanness. And you know, we're taught that anger is not a good emotion. You can't feel angry. People don't know how to deal with grief, so don't grieve anything, because people don't know how to deal with that. They'll just be like, oh, you know, oh, I'm really sorry for your loss, and then they'll feel all awkward. So we've got a collection of emotions that we're not really allowed to feel or express. We're not taught how to deal with them. We're just kind of said, oh yeah, you feel depressed, oh, I hope you feel better soon. And we're allowed to laugh, we're allowed to feel joy, we're allowed to feel happiness, love, and all the rest of it. We're not allowed to feel jealous, we're not allowed to feel anger or bitterness or resentment. No, let's just hide them. So it's about starting to accept that they are natural human emotions, and they're just an expression of an experience. So for me, I very much work with, you know, what's that emotion and expression of? It's just energy in motion. So what energetic response are you having? Anger is generally something that feels unfair. So what's feeling unfair to you right now? What can you do about it? What are you in control of? Because if you can focus on what can I do about it, then the anger is a really positive drive to get stuff done. It's one of the best emotions you can have for actually giving you that fire in your belly to move forward. if you can't do anything about it, well, how are you going to release that anger in a safe way that's resourceful rather than punching a wall and breaking your knuckles? How are you going to deal with that anger? Can you kind of express it vocally? Can you punch a pillow? Can you dance it out? Can you run it out? How can you use that energy that's kind of bottling up in you to do something constructive? And the same with grief. Grief is just a feeling of loss in some way. So what do I feel like I've lost? How can I go gentle on myself? How can I support myself through that feeling of loss? And, you know, it's not just the loss of a person. You've lost your brain. So you're saying about the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind has the best imagination ever. So it creates this whole life for you. And if you lose one person, it doesn't have to be a partner. This could be, you know, a pet. You lose that whole thing of, oh, going on those walks through the woods with this pet. So your brain's already mapped out all this experience you're going to have. And then you've lost that. So your brain's grieving the loss of all of its fantasies and imagined realities. So it's starting to work through that. And just accept that, you know, this is what's going on. Because we associate too much with emotion. We're like, I'm angry all the time. No, you're not. You just have anger outbursts that sometimes you can't control because you're not aware of what's going on. You're not actually dealing with the symptom that's causing that expression of anger. You're just kind of suppressing it. I can't be angry. And then you'll shout at the kids. And then it's like, oh, I shouted at the kids again. What's going on? Well, probably because you took on far too much work, put far too much pressure and stress on yourself. So your body is feeling like this is too much. So, yeah.
No, I agree with everything that you're saying, because, you know, I think anger is basically, well, when I drank, it released all my anger. I was very, very violently destructive when I drank. And when I used to come round in the morning and see the destruction, I couldn't believe how it had happened, because a lot of these things happened in blackout, and people would say to me, you did this. And, you know, I'm being honest now, you know, and I'd look around and think, what are they talking about? You know, because again, the blackout couldn't face what was actually happening, you know, and I hurt a lot of people and I destroyed a lot of properties and stuff like that, you know, and only because I was a people pleaser. And as a people pleaser, I couldn't be honest in the moment and express how I really felt, you see. So the problem was I used to hold it down and compress it and suppress it. And as you said, how are you going to release this in a non-destructive way? Well, I didn't know. I didn't understand that it was all this compressed, suppressed, repressed energy that was basically driving me on subconsciously all the time, you know. So my head was up here thinking it knew what was going on, and all this stuff was going, you know. And I think if that's the devil, then that's what the devil was driving me, you know. And, you know, you look at evil is the other way around, isn't it? You turn it around and you've got to live, you know. So I was sort of living back to front in a strange sort of a way. But, you know, maybe I had to get to a rock bottom before I got to a place of desperation where I was willing to be brave enough to look around and think, yes, you know. Now, there's a phrase, you know, it goes like this: selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of all our problems. And when I got told that, I thought, oh my God, right. But they said, no, not selfishness in the way that you think. Self-centeredness means that you're a sensitive person who's always trying to protect themselves. So you're living on the defensive all the time. So the solution to this is, bit by bit, is let go of the shell and start to come out of the shell, feel the discomfort of the interaction. And when you've reached a plateau, move forward. So it's always about moving forward. But I never had to learn anything. I had to unlearn and let go of all the stuff that I've been basically conditioned with, or if you like, because of this program, fed with all the time. So from a very early age, I was fed with ideas and emotions and attitudes that other people thought that I should behave to. Right. And you know, I realize today, the only thing I've got to do is I've got to do what works for me and what gives me a sense of joy. You know, there are some principles like, above all, try not to harm anybody if you can. but don't hold back on what you've got to say. Be truthful, be honest, be upfront, be straightforward, say what you mean what you say. Now, if the other person gets offended by what you've said, that's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
If they emotionally kick off, then they need to look at their emotional state, because you've just been honest, right? Not wishing to harm anybody. Just there's a phrase I use, and it goes, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest. And I say to people now, if I feel a disturbance, I say, look, there's something playing on my mind. Would you mind if I get it off my chest? And everybody says, oh, yes. And then I say, well,
afterwards, like,
then I say, well, it's just this. And then I watch their face and I think, oh, shit, right. And then if they kick off, I'll say, look, I'm only being honest, and I can let go of that now. I don't even get into second thinking about it now. I let it go. It's been said. I've cleared my throat, if you like, and I realize that that's the best way forward. It's about self-honesty, really, more than anything else. Because if I hold anything in, there's another phrase, you're only as sick as your secrets, and I had loads of secrets, and now when they're out, they're like nothing at all. They're just nonsense, really. But when they're in you, they create such mountains of drama that you couldn't possibly reveal it to anybody. So I can honestly say that in the way that I've been shown and over the years, and it's taken a long time, that I don't think there's anything in me anymore that I can be emotionally blackmailed over, right?
Yeah.
And people can come up to me and say, and they have done, and they do it still, do you remember what you did? Do you remember what you did at that party? And I'll go, no, tell me. Well, you peed in the flower vase, right? Oh, did I really? Right. Did you take any pictures? No. I said, oh, well, never mind. See, I've let myself off all that nonsense that went on, and I'm basically free of being blackmailed. And that, to me, is probably one of the greatest freedoms anybody could possibly have.
Yeah, because you let go of the shame and the guilt. So part of my process, I wrote a book a few years ago now, and I'd needed to write it. I didn't care if anyone bought it. I just needed to get it out. And it's got all my shame, all my guilt, all my, going from relationship to relationship, seeking love and wanting that kind of feeling of acceptance, but at the same time starving myself to death because I didn't feel like I could ever be accepted. So I was kind of stepping away from life, but wanting people to kind of pull me back into it. So it was through writing that book and just getting everything out there and just saying, look, this is my crud. Come at me if you want, but I'm owning it as my own. All the mistakes, all the flaws, all the failings, all the kind of things that I did to hurt other people. It's there for anybody to read and see. And since doing that, it's like there's no shame or guilt to hold anymore. And even now, I have outbursts every so often where I'm like, oh my gosh, life's too hard. And I'll just own it and say, I'm having a really, really shitty day. I feel like overwhelmed by everything. I can't get off the floor. And then the next day I'm fine because I've owned it and I've said, this is where I'm at. I'll reach out to friends who know that life is like that. And if it's like that, you're dead, that's your flat line. So I can just be however I am in that moment. And you don't need to apologize for it anymore. It's kind of like, and that is so liberating to just be human and vulnerable and flawed and imperfect and not really feel like you need to live up to these, Instagram filtered lives where it's just a highlight reel. That is so liberating in itself. And it's just like, that's when you start to really connect to yourself and what's going on.
So the relationship between emotion then and food. Let me tell you a little bit about the neuroscience as far as I understand it. You mentioned fight and flight response, and fight and flight response, it's a defensive response to a perceived threat. And sometimes we don't know we're being threatened. We just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what actually happens is in the fight and flight response, we reach out for food because there's a perception that we'll need some energy either in the moment, so that's generally carbohydrates that we reach out for, or in the long term, fats, right? So there's an instinct in all human beings. It's the root level instinct where they take on board food, not because they're hungry, it's because of a perceived threat that it's trying to store food because these things are happening to us all the time. So if you like, the unconscious, which is trying to help us, it switches our emotional state and our hormones to reach out for food in order that we've got some stored energy in case the fight's going to go on for a long time. So
Yeah.
you can't think your way out of that. You can't think your way out of it. What needs to change is how you perceive the situation, because this is directly related to perception. And most people, they don't realize that their perception is based upon how they were societally influenced from a very, very early age.
Yeah.
And so there's a great big behavioral thing that goes on here. So the other thing is, if you overeat and get loads of food and really get the packing in, from a science point of view, what it does then, it stimulates the rest and digest response. It's like a balance. And that's, if you like, the feminine energy in a human being. The fight and flight is masculine oriented, and the feminine is the other one is a rest and digest response. So it's the body's attempt at the level of the unconscious, right, to try and reset some sort of a balance.
Yeah.
Well, this also happens at the heart as well. So, our heartbeat goes up initially, our blood pressure goes up. And if we don't deal with it, the body will slow us down, right, and exhaust us. Now, the other thing is, if we drive ourselves on in that exhaustion, then we'll need to, you see, it's like lunacy, isn't it? So rather than us going forward, right, and like shoving butties in while we're doing work on the computer and all that, the idea might be to say, hang on a second, I feel a bit emotionally out of balance here. I just need to take a step back, create a bit of space in my head, and try and get a better perspective on that. Sue, now, after years of practice like myself, that that's the solution.
Yeah.
It's to step back and create space and not drive ourselves on. However, the world says, bleep, there's the text, there's the email, there's the deadline, there's this, there's that. Everything's about fast pace, and multitasking, right? Do something different. Take a step back and take your time. Because to me, this has all become about managing energy and managing time. Over to you, old chap.
And about being a human being, not a human doing. So exactly. Starting to just be more, because when you're in that stress response and you're reaching for the packet of biscuits and you feel like that's the only thing that's kind of going to calm your nerves or help you relax, you're still in that doing mode. And as you say, that kind of fix of carbohydrates and fats is going to sedate you, and it numbs. That's why it's so addictive, because it creates these kind of dopamine chemicals that kind of really kind of send you down. So yeah, it's about starting to find those nice chemicals that help you relax without having to reach for a packet of biscuits that you'll probably feel rubbish afterwards. And it costs a lot of money. I used to have two family-sized bars of chocolate every single night. If I didn't have them, I would go spare. It's like that's just desperation when you're having to go to the shop at 9 o'clock at night to get a fix of chocolate. Then that's seriously impacting your life, really. And if you think that was like £3 a night, spread over a year, how much money is that just wasted on chocolate to sedate emotions, when I could have just meditated for 10 minutes and got the same effect? So it's trying to find the more resourceful ways of getting that same impact. There's so much to food that it's a whole day in itself, because society teaches us what food means. Every sort of gathering is centered around food. You have barbecues, you have Christmas, you have Easter, you have Mother's Day, where people bring you chocolates. So much of our social elements are centered around food. that in itself is hard to break. We've got habits of foods that we like to eat, that we just eat out of routine, that you think, oh, I couldn't go without bread. How could it go without bread? And it's like, bread is just a food. It's just a food. But we've been so conditioned to believe certain things about food, and good foods and bad foods. And, you know, I'm on a diet again and I can't eat them because they're sins. And these are, you know, there's so much to it that every individual will have to unpick all of their, I say, like, the brain is like a tree. So you've got these branches of what, you know, different things mean. And you'll have certain pathways. So these are like your neural pathways that get formed about what food means to you. And you've got a big fat branch, because this is from right from when you were kids. So I used to, food was love to me, because that was how my mum demonstrated love to me. And she didn't do it through any malice. It was just, you know, she was a really good cook and she would, you know, cook really good food for us. And that was how I received love. So for me, food is love, and that's a big fat branch. To then say, no, food is just food and love is a separate branch in itself, they're tiny branches that I've had to nurture and nourish and allow to grow, while this big fat branch is being starved of kind of that fuel, really. But even in, you know, even when that's dead and I'm not feeding that branch that food is love anymore, it's still going to sit there. You have a dead tree in the field, it's still a dead tree in the field. The branches don't suddenly fall off. So it's acknowledging that branch is still there, that thought pattern is still there, but I'm not going to feed it anymore. Literally, I'm not going to feed that, you know, pathway. I'm going to receive love in these ways, and I'm going to eat food in these ways. And I'm not going to combine the two in quite the same way, because that to me isn't healthy for me personally. So yeah,
I think it's
so
it's
much.
fast. Sorry, Sue. Sorry. It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, because our conscious mind thinks it knows what needs to be done, but what I've realized is it doesn't have the power to change, because the eating behavior, as you said, it's pattern associated and it's driven by emotion, not by thinking. So to grit your teeth and grind it and say, yes, I will not have this today. You know, that's why diets started on the 2nd of January, right? They generally don't last until the end of January. But people are trying their best, you know, and there's other people who, like, I call it the boot camp approach. You know, they've got supporters going, yes, you can, yes, you can. And it stresses people that much. It actually drives them back to the food, to the drink, to the cigarettes, because it's directly related to the fight and flight response, right? So they're eating they're eating food like substances with a hunger like urge, neither of which are true, you know, because most of the food that people eat when they're like that, they can't think, is this nutritious? It's just, that'll do, it'll fill the gap, you know. So these are the things. But people, if they understood this, and I've been trying to push this in the generation of type 2 diabetes for years, right, in the medical profession, I've been trying to say, don't you understand that this is about feelings first, not thinking, you see? So I'm trying to help people to understand that emotion that even comes from our unconscious, it's that's driving the process. And as you say, it could be related to repressed guilt, repressed shame, repressed stuff from childhood. Until those things are unearthed and expressed, you've got no chance of changing, you know. And I think that's why so many people, this is just my view, you know, particularly to do with alcoholism, most people have to basically get to the points of insanity and death before they become willing to change. So to actually jump in and emotionally support people is actually disabling rather than enabling to me, because there's a certain element of personal responsibility that needs to be sort of accepted, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of that do or die point. So it's that because I say, when I'm talking about when saying no to people, so people pleaser, we're all kind of people pleasers because it's our survival instinct. We're tribal creatures. We need that tribe around us, and we need to know that you've got people who've got our back. Because if we were on our own in the wild, we probably wouldn't survive very long. We need the person over there looking out for a tiger. We need someone over there looking out for a tiger. We need someone who's a night owl that's going to stay up all night. So we like to have that tribe around us. We like to please other people. But when we're constantly saying yes to everything and everyone, it's never going to be enough. You're never going to feel enough because you've got them to please as well and them to please, and you can't split yourself in two. And also, I've lost my train of thought. What was I doing? Oh yeah, so you're actually disempowering those people. It's only when you say no to that person that they're like, oh shit, I've got to find an alternative solution here. Like, what do I do instead? That they actually start to think, oh, I can do this. I can solve a problem on my own. I don't need to go to them to kind of solve it for me. And it's the same with any sort of self-development work. You know, I had so many people trying to help me get better from anorexia and anxiety and all these things. And it was only when I realized, actually, there's nothing you can do for me. Absolutely nothing. And I'm either going to die or I'm going to live at this point. And I made the conscious choice. I'm not ready to die yet. Yeah. I'm really not ready to die yet. And that was when the real drive and that spark kicked in. And once that kicks in, there's no stopping it. You will relapse. You'll kind of go back to, like, as I said before, you'll go back to some destructive habits, but it will never get back to that point of kind of the pit of despair where you're like, right, it's do or die now. I either get out or I'm gone. And I work a lot with women and men who are in situations of domestic violence, and it's the same thing. So they need to reach a point where they're like, I either get out of this situation or I'm stuck here for life. And it's the same response with anything really. We've all, as human beings, we've got that fighting spirit within us. Not everyone is going to reach that point where it kicks in. Unfortunately, not everybody makes it over that hurdle. But I would say 90% of people, once they get that choice point, yeah, they can kind of jump over and be like, do you know what? I've got to keep going. I don't care what it takes from this point on. I'm not going back to that point again.
It's funny you say that, because I was going to say that they call that the choice point out there, and then you said it. But many people are talking about the choice point now. But my view, it's become very simple for me now. It's, how do you feel, Joe, honestly, in this situation? What do you really, Joe, what do you really, really want to do? Right. And I just choose that. And my head doesn't go into, yes, but if I say that, they might think this, because that was like jumping into other people's minds, trying to psych out and think what they were thinking. And you know what, Sue? I used to think I could read people's minds, and I didn't have a clue most of the time.
No.
That's true. You know, you can't, because you might think that's your own thinking, saying, "Oh, that's what they're thinking." You know, and I realized today is I don't even need to know what another person's thinking. I don't even have to consider their feelings anymore. And this is something that sounds really selfish, but it's not. I'm being dead honest with me. Right. If they can't handle me being honest with me, then that's their problem. It isn't mine. And I don't mean to be horrible about this, but somebody said to me once, it was a man called a sponsor. I have a sponsor that if I'm stuck, I have somebody that I could just open up and just share anything at all. It doesn't matter what it is. And he doesn't advise me like saying, oh, you don't want to be in that relationship. You should get somebody younger or what. They don't do that. They don't, or older probably, but what he says is, he points me back to my own inner guru, as you like, your inner tuition, your intuition. And he says, what is your heart, right, telling you to do? What is your heart intelligence saying? And I always know what the answer is, but sometimes I've got to get it out like a piece of tic-tac, you know what I mean? It's like it's all got to come out. And then at the end, the answer will be there. And so I have to find my own answers, because if I go to a therapist or somebody and they tell me what to do and it's not successful, then the sneak in me can blame them. See what I mean? I won't take personal responsibility then. So my sponsor he puts it back to me straight away. And he said to me, Joe, soon as you point your finger like that, you're an adult, aren't you? And I said, yeah, yeah. He said, as soon as you point the finger like that, there's three coming back at you straight away. And I call this ism. I, self, me. It's all about me. But I'll get to the point in a minute because I don't know how to go on. But what he was saying is, Joe, you know, when you're considering other people's feelings and you hold things back, he said, it's not about their feelings. He said, you're one of the most selfish people I've ever met. And I thought, excuse me, because I thought I was like Saint Joseph, you know what I mean? And he said, you're not trying to spare their feelings, Joe. You're trying to spare your own feelings in case what you say and they kick off, right? He said, so, start getting honest. And I came away and when somebody tells you the truth and it really rips your heart out. Well, that was one of those moments. But you know what? Saved me life, gave me a totally different perspective on we're all responsible for how we emotionally react to situations.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility in the way that we process the information and how we feel. And once I started to understand that, I knew that if I was feeling emotionally disturbed, it was because of my perception and the way that I was internally processing information. And that freed me, because I know that if I'm disturbed now, right, then I'm upsetting myself. Nobody's upset me, right? I'm upsetting myself because of the way that I'm emotionally processing the information.
Yeah. And half the time you're processing it in a way that isn't even real. So it's like, don't believe what you think, because it's your perception of the events that you're kind of dealing with. And everyone can deal with the same situation in a totally different way, depending on which bit they're looking at and what angle they're coming in at. So
you know that expression, first impressions or lasting impressions. I'll put an end on that, and usually wrong. Because like we're dead psychic, aren't we? Oh, I'm psyching that person out, and I know I haven't got a clue most of the time. And they say something, I think, oh, I didn't expect that. People say to me, what shall I do here? I've got no idea. I don't even know what to do myself. I'm just trying. I'm trying to feel my way through life, right? And try not to harm anybody and trying to be helpful. That's all I'm trying to do. Not save the bleeding planet or save the world. I'm just trying to do what my intuition's guiding me to do. Yeah. And that's where I'm up to with things, Tell us something about the bulimia side of things, because we have an anorexia and bulimia. So if you don't mind.
So my understanding of anorexia is about control and kind of almost starving life out of yourself, literally. So when you feel like life is too hard and too overwhelming, you almost want to not live, but you're not ready to take that leap of cutting your life short. So you just starve yourself of life. You don't deserve life. And again, that association of food being love, you don't deserve love, so you can't have that food because that food represents love. So that's kind of the anorexia element. There's so much more to it, but that's kind of the basis of it. With the bulimia, it's almost like you are consuming so much food to numb that emotion, but then you want to purge that emotion out. You want to get rid of all that stuff that you were trying to suppress and get it out of your body. So again, it's those suppressed emotions, that suppressed stress, that suppressed anger that you're pushing down, but then it's almost too much and you need to get it out of your system. So you're trying to get rid of those emotions rather than just dealing with them and processing them for what they are. And it's very similar with compulsive eating. So the only difference with bulimia is that you're actually purging it out in some way, either laxatives or via vomiting. So that's the only difference with sort of compulsive eating. Compulsive eating, again, is very much about kind of numbing the emotions and filling that void that you can feel inside that is never going to be filled by food. But again, subconsciously, you know that. Logically, you don't. You just want the food. And then, of course, it sets up this big cycle because you're still not processing those emotions. You're still not dealing with what's causing you to feel anxious, what's causing you to feel stressed. So you just repeat the process. And it's only when you can take a step back again, from those responses and those reactions, that you can start to go, oh, right, okay, that's why I feel anxious. That's why I feel stressed. That's why I feel like I need to kind of push all this stuff down. And when you do that, you don't, it's like after a while, you don't need to have those reactions anymore, because you're processing the stuff before it gets to that point that you need to shove it down or purge it out. So yeah,
So,
that's my understanding.
so it sounds like self-awareness is important then, you
Yeah,
know, and here's the thing is,
self-awareness and self-acceptance,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that you can be aware that, oh, I feel so guilty for all the things I've done in my life, or I feel such shame for the things that have happened and the choices I've made, or I feel so angry at how things have turned out. You can be aware of it, but it's only when you accept it and you show compassion to yourself that you did the best with what you had at that point in time.
yeah, yeah.
Let's just be kind to yourself, that now you know better, you've got more choice, and you have the option to take a better choice that's more resourceful to you and everyone around you. And,
So,
and just going compassionate with yourself on that.
I mean, it's great that you've just said that, because that thing about at the time you couldn't have done any better with the mentality that you had. And I used to hate this because I'd be using the mentality that I had when this person was saying it, looking back in the past, taking the mentality that I had now into the past and thinking from, you know what I mean, don't you? So he said to me, you didn't used to think like that. He said, this is the way you're thinking now. So, with the resources that you had at the time and the way that you thought, Joe, have you always been wanting to help people? Yeah. Well, you see, obviously, then this emotional thing that had been built up over years and all the programs and all the conditions, they were driving you. Did you know it was that at the time? And I'd say, of course not. I'm only just finding it out now. And he'd say, no, exactly. You're supposed to be clever, you used to say to me. He said, can you understand now? And once I started to let myself off the hook, more energy came up. I felt more vitalized. My self-esteem started to build. My self-confidence started to build, which gave me the motivation and the energy and the courage then to take the things that I've always been afraid of and take the steps forward. So
Yeah.
really, it's about shaming the devil, if you want to, But my big thing would be to say is, find somebody is a tout. This is the whole purpose of the confessional box in the olden days. It was to be able to offload all this stuff without fear of recrimination, except I think they mixed up with that in the end, because I used to get 5,000 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, and a few Ave Marias, you naughty boy. So obviously, as a kid who wanted to do the right thing, I started to tell lies in the confessional box then, and then it became a pathological liar. I'm still working on that, by the way. But, I was like Danny Kaye. I could drop a story at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? Tell it just a big story. I didn't know that everybody knew that I was telling stories because I thought I was being dead convincing, except when I caught him going, he's off again. You know what I mean? So, you're always the last to know. That's what I find, So I think in the process that I went through, and I know that you use similar processes, is it's really finding somebody that you can trust, a tight-lipped friend, if you like, who's not going to give you any advice as such, but is a listening ear where you feel that you're being listened to. It's almost like learning to listen and listening to learn, really,
Yeah.
And I've got maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of those people where I could tell them absolutely anything about any part of my life. I know that their job is to listen to that. They're almost like channels, because most of the time, because I'm one of those two people as well, they'll tell me stuff, and half an hour later I'll think, I've got no idea what they were talking about. You just forget it, don't you? Because it's important to them. It's not that it's not important to you, but their story is their story that they've got to unpick, really, by sharing it with somebody else.
Yeah.
And what I learned, Sue, was that you can't really do it by admitting it to yourself. You've actually got to go to a step It's almost like humility, this, in a way, where you share your deepest and your darkest secrets with another human being, because it takes courage to do that. But it's almost like you're showing to your intuition, look, I am willing now to go to any lengths to be free of all this shit now, you know. And it took me a long time. My sponsor used to say to me, well, when I went through this process, is there anything at all in your memory that you can remember that you're going to take to the grave with you, you know? And I searched my memory over time. I didn't do it right for a long time, but in the end, I offloaded some stuff that I was never going to tell anybody else. And he looked at me, because I'm looking at him to look for a reaction, you know. And he looked at me as to say, God, is that all?
Is that it? Yeah.
You know, is that all? He'd say to me, without giving the game away, that's perfectly natural. I think, oh, okay.
And then you're like, I'll have to create a bigger story
Yeah,
now.
exactly. I go, and it was really bad, you know. And he go, oh,
And there was 10 badges as well. 10 badges.
And so in the end, you just end up, I mean, this is it, sharing the deepest and darkest secrets of somebody's life, and we're laughing about it, you know, because you see, I was like hooked on the drama. Oh God, that never happened, did it? You know what I mean? So that's what I've learned. I'm an open channel now, as far as I know. I mean, Christ, there might be stuff deep and dark. Do you know what? I don't care. Over the years, things have emerged that I'd completely forgotten about. All I do is get on the phone, say, hello, so-and-so. Some stuff's just come up. Do you mind if I share it? No, go on. Is that it? Yeah, thanks very much. See you next week. And that's as far as it goes now, because it's left me. I'm not hanging on to it. I'm not analysing it. It's gone, you know. And that's where I'm up to now, Sue. You know, tell us about self-esteem and self-image then, Sue, if you don't mind.
Okay, I've just got a little bit to touch on with what you've just said as well, with the whole deepest, darkest secrets. That in itself keeps you trapped in that fight-flight response, because you're so afraid of being honest with the world and showing up with those deep, dark secrets that you stay in that fear state of, I'm going to be rejected here, and then I'm going to be out on my own, and that means certain death, which is kind of like our ultimate fear as sort of Neanderthal creatures that we are. We think we're evolved, but we're really not. We've still got the same brain as we did when we were cavemen. So our ultimate fear is to be on our own. So we have these like deep, dark secrets that we hold on to because they're so bad. And oh my God, if people knew the real me, that keeps us in that fear state of, oh God, what if they find out? What if, and then I'll be rejected and then I'll be dead. So it's kind of when we start to open up about those shames and those kind of guilts and those bad parts of us, that fear just goes, because it's like, oh, they haven't rejected us and left us for dead. Okay, right, okay, let's just plod on with life then and find some berries. So it takes us out of that fear state. So it is through kind of verbalizing those things, because I've done work with people where you do like art therapy and stuff, and people release it in different ways, but it is that kind of verbal, actually saying the words. Yeah. You know, there were some words I put in my book that I was like, oh my God, people are going to read this, but I need to put the words, and they're quite dark words, but I need to put them on paper and actually get them out there. And once I'd done it, it was like, oh yeah, my mum's read it, and my brother and my friends from school and people who I go dancing with. And it was like, okay, that was easy. No one's kind of told me I'm, you know, should kind of just go in a corner and stay there. So that in itself is kind of liberating. But when it comes to self-esteem and things like that, it's the same thing. So it's finding that acceptance that you're not perfect. No one's perfect. And if you think anyone's got it all sorted, they're lying, quite frankly. So it's trying to find the bits of you that you can show appreciation of. Again, I said about the gratitude journals, I'm not all up there with the self-love trend, because I think it can make people feel guilty that they can't look in the mirror and say, I love you, you're so beautiful. You might not get to that point, but if you can get to a point where you say, I acknowledge that, you know, you've got a wonky nose and you've got a weird accent and your hair's a bit frizzy. If you can just say, well, yeah, that's me. and I can't really change
Oh, I
it.
thought you were talking about me then. Because look, wonky nose, frizzy hair, strange accent.
You and me both. So, we're perfectly imperfect together. But yeah, that in itself gives you that level of self-esteem where you're like, this is me. I can't change it. I'm not going to go under a knife to kind of surgically enhance myself. So I either need to accept it and, celebrate the things that I do, like about myself. I've got good eyes, or I've got a good heart, or, I'm very creative, and kind of build on those and focus the spotlight on those things that, I think are all right. I might not love them, but I think, oh, they're all right. That's where you need to focus your energy, because you'll always find flaws. You're always going to find flaws and reasons to hate yourself and reasons to not feel enough. So yeah,
I agree. It's that hour's gone quickly, hasn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
Stop for England, me.
Yeah, and me. But the point is, I think in the last couple of minutes, and Sue, how if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that? Will you put it in the Facebook comments and
I
stuff
will.
like
I'll
that?
put all my details in.
Yeah,
So.
if you would, yeah, please, that's great. And maybe further down the line we'll come back and build a bit on this and see what goes on. But in the last couple of minutes, maybe a couple of simple, straightforward, practical tips that people can do. Have you got any of those coming up, emerging?
Yeah. So for me, mindfulness, but not mindfulness in the sense of sitting there doing a half-hour body scan. Literally just noticing at any point in the day, just noticing something, whether it's something you can hear, whether it's how your finger feels on your thumb, how your clothes feel on your skin, a smell, something that you can taste. Notice something. And the more you can do that, so if you do that 5 times a day, notice 5 things a day, that's 5 minutes worth of mindfulness. And you'll find that when you start to create that space of coming back to human being and being present with something, the more you'll kind of want to do more of that. And then you'll find that you're doing it on a regular basis where you're like, oh, that feels quite cold on my skin, or that smell was really nice, or did you hear that bird there? And you'll notice that you're kind of doing it as more of a default, because we do that as a default. We're very aware of everything, 70,000 thoughts flying through your head and being processed that you're not even aware of. So start to notice them, start to notice the colors on the flower, or the cloud that looks like a pig going across the sky, whatever it is. Start to notice those things, because that brings you back to you and that kind of present state, and takes you out of that fight or flight response that we're almost driven into. So yeah, that would be my biggest tip, is just being more mindful.
Brilliant, thank you. So that's like the head part of that's the take notice of the 5 ways to well-being, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And there's a couple more, if people want to Google 5 ways to well-being, there's lots of good information on there. But I would say more than anything else is become aware of your breathing. That's the thing that and I might do some short little lessons, if you like, for one, or lectures or whatever the hell they would call it, teachings. I might show you about the neuroscience of how slow, deep breathing. The important thing is to make sure that your in breath and your out breath are of the same length, and 3 10-minute sessions, maybe with your hand on your heart, as though you were breathing from in and out of your heart. So it's basically getting that feeling sensation of your heart area, like, like that, like snuggly feeling there, like that. So once you've got that snuggly feeling, right, is to imagine that you're breathing in 2, 3, 4, 5, collect all the rubbish and breathe it out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what will happen then is, like you've just done, is it will bring you back to yourself. It will take you out of your head center and back into your heart center. And then it's almost like miraculously you start to get like insights coming up. Right. And it's almost like your heart says to you, oh, hello. Paying
Smile.
attention, are you? Yeah, no. Why didn't you ask? I've been sitting here waiting for you to contact me for 38 years now. All right, dickhead. Oh, sorry. You know, and it will talk to you in the language that you talk to yourself in, because it's you. It's actually the next bigger, better, more expanded part of you that Maslow talked about in his hierarchy of needs. But anyway, that's for another thing. So that would be that one. The other thing is movement as well. Movement. Plenty of fresh air if you can get it anywhere these days without breathing all sorts of nonsense in. Right. So plenty of fresh air, back to nature, plenty of movement, dancing, music, stuff that makes you joyful. Breathe all that in. Right. And the little mantra is breathe in the light and breathe out the shite. So that's Dr. Effin Joe signing off, basically. But that's Sue. I'd just like to say it's lovely to meet you, and thanks very much. And we'll have another one of these, you know, down the line. I've got a few more people coming on, you know. So
Sounds absolutely fab.
and I may see you knocking about for a coffee sometime and all that sort of business. But thanks a lot, and hopefully see you soon, love.
You will. Take care.
And
See
you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.